everybody is having problems in the city. There is no doubt. But the thing is, based on your social profile, your problem might be getting attended to, but somebody else's problem is not getting attended to. Our idea was not just to get freedom from British, but also to get freedom from poverty, to get freedom from discrimination, and to build a new India where, like, everybody can prosper, everybody can develop. The idea of getting freedom is so that each of us also have the freedom to develop. Those who are privileged and well off must understand that inequality will hit everybody. They cannot think that inequality will hurt only the poor or the marginalized. We are sharing the city, correct? Like, it's only fair. Those who are building my house, those who are collecting the trash from my house, those who are sweeping the street, power does not concede itself. Power has to be snatched. Right? So nobody will say, okay, today onwards we will start listening to bus commuters. Today onwards we'll start listening to street vendors. It's not going to happen. The elite are not going to automatically start listening, right? Because it's also the fact that, like, you stay elite by, like, restricting things to, like, a particular group, right? Of course, even the rich person has access to the commons. I'm not saying they don't have access to the commons, but you have to see how to distribute the commons in what is the best way. Similarly, like the Bomala, streets are the urban commons. And commons have to be used by everybody. The officials of the municipalities and the police do not understand the preambular value of dignity. The word dignity, which is there in our preamble, they don't understand the meaning of that, which is why they evict them like that, which is why they spill their wares on the road, etc. It's actually a very dire situation right now, right? Like you said, land and land markets are kind of controlling this city. We need to come together to make a city where, like, traveling in public transport reduces your tiredness and doesn't increase your tiredness. Where when you walk on the road, it helps you forget your other troubles and makes you smile. You should be able to see the tree, smell the fragrance of a flower of the Ratkirani or Akash Mallike or something like that, where you're able to enjoy street food. Losing hope or being hopeless is actually a privilege.
Lakhs of people migrate into India's largest cities each year. They contribute significantly to the urban economy. These are the people who work for a lot of businesses which are established in the city. They eke out a livelihood. They access the same public spaces that we do. But do we know what they go through? They are largely invisible. They are largely marginalized. And when we ask for resources, we don't seem to think they exist. They don't have a voice. Who are these people and who speaks up for them? Hello and welcome to the OoruLabs podcast. I'm Sathya Sankaran. Today we speak with Vinay Sreenivasa, who has been a social activist for a long time, that I've known him for the past decade and a half, working and making voices heard. Let's listen from him what the scenario is, how it has developed over time, and where we are today and where we are going. Because there is increasing disparity, there is increasing levels of prosperity among a certain section, which is probably not trickling down the way we expect. And what does it mean to listen to the marginalized? Let's hear from him. ವಿನಯ್, ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ರಾಜ್ಯೋತ್ಸವದ ಶುಭಾಶಯಗಳು.
ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು ಸತ್ಯ, ತಮಗೂ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ರಾಜ್ಯೋತ್ಸವದ ಶುಭಾಶಯಗಳು.
Thank you for coming on the show also. It was something that I wanted to do for a long time, but it just kept skipping. And increasingly, I'm realizing that some of the things you have always stood for, I've known you for almost a decade and a half at least, since 2007, 2010, when I've been in the civic space. I've been following your journey also in parallel from the Hasiru days and all of those things. Increasingly, the cities are going in a certain direction.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing that some of the things in this direction are not showing up in the conversations, things that you have always stood for, right? The inclusivity of the city is slowly going away. It is there in people's minds. Like, if you look at me, I deal with a lot of the people from the affordable segment, or you can call them elites also, because we are all earning members of society far better than some of the others. And I don't see the others in the conversation except as an empathy point, one brownie point kind of a thing. We think about them, oh, they are also there, they are also there. In some other conversation, they are not even there. It is just me, my pothole, my delivery service. That is where it stops. What has been your observation over the years? Decade and a half, you've seen Bengaluru. I'm sure the story is the same in other cities also. Where do you think it is going? Do you share the view that I hold?
Yeah, I agree with you, Satya. The way our cities are growing, especially if you look at Bangalore, most of my work has been in Bangalore. We see that problems of certain segments of people are being highlighted, and problems of the large majority of those who are actually make the city are becoming more and more invisible. So, ಅದು ಏನಾಗ್ತಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, it depends on the area where you live, depending on like say how much money you have, depending on your social profile, things get highlighted. I'll just give you an example. Mane floods adaga in Yelahanka, there was this apartments. I think Kendriya Vihar. I'm not sure the name.
Kendriya Vihar.
Kendriya Vihar apartment. So it got flooded. So the government sent those boats. All those rescue operations were there. Similarly, in North Bangalore in Jakkur, a lot of construction workers stay in one particular spot, and allu the houses got flooded, and half were submerged, etc. But not much happened there. The BBMP officials visited once. One meal was provided. Adadmele ಏನಿಲ್ಲ. And most of us neither did the media cover it, nor did the state cover it. So this is what I mean by this, invisibilization of certain problems. Everybody is having problems in the city. There is no doubt. You might be very rich and staying in Kendriya Vihar, but you still had a problem. But the thing is, based on your social profile, your problem might be getting attended to, but somebody else's problem is not getting attended to. Recently, the government set up a committee to look into the problems of these technology bugs. Software tech majors and those companies, they already have a lot of clout. If they make a call to a minister's office, to BBMP commissioner's office, it's not difficult for them to get an appointment. I'm not saying they're able to get everything done, but at least they have access. But no such committee has been formed for looking into the problems of, say, slum residents, of, say, Pina Industrial Estate also, right? Or a lot of other people who are also suffering due to the rains. Now, if you look at the city center, the slums in the city center, they have like the very old slums. Some of them are like 80 to 100 years old. And these slums, people were allowed to stay there only because it was sort of like no man's land. It's like near marshy area, Rajkalwa, they all keep getting flooded. ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ಕಮಿಟಿ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಏನಿಲ್ಲ. ಅವ್ರು ಪ್ರತಿ ವರ್ಷ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನಿಂಗ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಸಿಟಿ. ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಬಿಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಮೋರ್ unequal, and some problems are getting highlighted, the rest are getting invisibilized.
What then is the solution? Because it is not that the industrialists of this city are not going to not have a voice. You are not ಮೊನ್ನೆ ಕೂಡ when the solutions for this flooding and everything needed to be done, the immediate committee or action force or whatever was formed was of the industry leaders, because they cry louder, they have access on Twitter, they tag ministers and all of those things. Not that solution doesn't benefit somebody else, but the action itself comes out of a view which doesn't include Intoro. And while Kendriya Vihar was highlighted because of the boards, look, the IT city is going on a board. Nobody ever says all the labor that is building this city is also going out. They don't even have a boat. So what is this invisibilization? How can it be made visible, and why should it be made visible?
So one, why should it be made visible? Andre, see, when we got freedom from the British, our freedom fighters worked a lot to get freedom from the British. And when we got freedom from British, our idea was not just to get freedom from British, but also to get freedom from poverty, to get freedom from discrimination, and to build a new India where, everybody can prosper, everybody can develop. The idea of getting freedom is so that each of us also have the freedom to develop. It's not just freedom from the British. Irrespective of which family I'm born into, I should be able to have access to education, and I should be able to pursue an occupation of my choice. And this is what we decided as a nation, and these are our constitutional values. If you look at the preamble, it speaks about equality of status and opportunity. So, ನೀನು ಒಂದು ಬೀದಿ ವ್ಯಾಪಾರಿ ಮಗ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಒಬ್ರು ಸಾಫ್ಟ್ವೇರ್ ಟೆಕ್ ಕಂಪನಿ ಸಿಇಒ ಮಗ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, you should have equal opportunity. Education wise, you should have opportunity, and you should have equal status. State must look at both, a poor person and a rich person, a woman, a transgender, and a man equally. And we want to have that kind of society because, that is the human thing to do also, right? It's not just because the constitution is saying, but it's also the human thing to do. And which is why that is the way we need to go. The second thing is, those who are privileged and well off, must understand that inequality will hit everybody. They cannot think that inequality will hurt only the poor or the marginalized. I'll just give you an example of this electronic city flyover. Right, the tech companies pushed for this flyover to be built from Silk Board all the way to Electronic City, direct flyover with no stops in between. They thought they could escape, fly over the mess below and just go directly. In the rains, there was 1.5 hour traffic jam on the Electronic City flyover. People got down from their cars and started walking on the flyover. And because they built it in such a manner that it's exclusive, nobody else should come up, they had to walk 10 kilometers. There is no way to get off from the flyover also, right? So either you suffer in the jam or you walk 10 kilometers. And this solution, which actually produced more inequality, finally hurt them also. But they're not understanding that. Today, a lot of pollution in Bangalore is contributed to by vehicles, right? In Bangalore, if you see in 2000, around 2015, there were 11.3 lakh cars. In 2024, there are 25 lakh cars. The number of buses has actually reduced by around 100 or so, but the number of cars have increased by 100%, right? And cars are occupying more of the space in the streets, more of the space in the city. So there's a very unequal access to resources. This inequality is finally hurting everybody. It's not just hurting the bus user who's getting stuck in the jam, the car user is also stuck. So another reason why this invisibility needs to go and everybody needs to be heard is it's good for everybody. It's good even for the privileged to make sure that you sort out inequality. This is our constitutional vision. This is the humane thing to do. And thirdly, inequality will hit everybody in the long run, and people need to understand that. Right. So these are the reasons why we need to pay attention to everybody, and we are sharing the city, correct? Like it's only fair. Those who are building my house, those who are collecting the trash from my house, those who are sweeping the street, they're actually doing me a favor, and it's my job also. It's only fair to see that they're being paid fair wages, they're fair working conditions, and it's just working conditions. But and that's something that we all have to take note of.
That comes to who will do it. I'm sure that at least a percentage of the elites who are asking for solutions are not saying that you should exclude them explicitly. It's just that it doesn't appear that they also need to take that into consideration when asking. When they say number one flyover kodi, they are not thinking about that, but that also means that the accountability of thinking about the others comes into the government now. They are accountable to say, I have heard you, but I need to hear them also. Now, in the hearing them, there are things that you have done like bus prayanikara vedike and many other things. Even for the IT workers, you had some of this representation of people that you said, let's help you bring your voice out, visibilizing the invisible kind of a thing. Tell me about some of these things and why those are important, and how do you think those have fared? Because the counter voice is required for the government to say, look, this solution also affects them. Have you been able to do that, and how far down the road are we?
So I'll speak with a couple of examples. One was, all of us were fighting road widening in 2009 and 10, right?
Correct.
And when we were fighting road widening, we started looking into why does BBMP want to widen roads? Then we realized they want to widen roads because they feel traffic is more. Then we were like, why is traffic more? Then one of the things was, okay, public transport is not so great. So then we started looking into the problems. Why is public transport not so great? When we started seeing that, we realized that not only is public transport not so great, it's actually in a manner that there is a lot of people who have no option but to use public transport. They're dependent solely on public transport. They cannot afford a two-wheeler or car. And the lack of options in public transport is actually hurting them. Right? You're not able to go to the college of your choice because there is no bus there. Or you're not able to afford the bus, so you're walking. And which is when we felt that there is no voice for bus commuters in the city. And we felt that it's important to form the Bengaluru Bus Prayanikara Vedike. So after we formed the Bengaluru Bus Prayanikara Vedike, we formed the Bus Prayanikara Vedike in 2013. We have been a bit inactive for the last year or so. But till then, we've been quite active. And we succeeded in having a voice for the bus commuters. And if you see in Bangalore, the bus fares have not increased after 2014. We formed the Vedike, and that year, actually, the bus fares had increased. We protested, they brought it down by a little. Then again, increase in 2014, we protested, they brought it down by a little. But we have succeeded in altering the discourse around buses in Bangalore. The state has realized the importance of buses. The media and civil society and urban elite have realized that actually bus fares were very high. And if you have high bus fares, one, lesser people will use the bus, which causes problem for all. Two, there are actually people whose lives are being hurt by the bus fare. For example, there were domestic workers who, before Shakti
Hmm.
scheme, they were walking up to 6 kilometers a day because they could not afford the bus fare for 6 kilometers a day. 6 kilometers andre almost three stages ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. And two-way ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ it would be like almost 30 rupees a day, right? Which translates to around 1,000 rupees a month. So this was the situation, and because we formed the Bus Pranakara Vedike, we put out material on social media showing how high bus fares impact people. We've organized public meetings on this. We've organized public hearings on this. We've organized protests on this. We have met BMTC officials. We have met different MLAs of different parties. We have met various transport ministers, finance secretary, etc. So all of that work helped highlight the fact that these are the problems bus commuters are facing. And not just that, another thing that we did was, women routinely face harassment in BMTC buses. There is a lot of sexual harassment in the buses, but nobody was paying attention to that problem. And we had a series of protests in 2013 to highlight this problem, after which BMTC set up a women's safety committee. And the Women's Safety Committee then started looking at, okay, what is the harassment that women are facing in the buses? How do we counter that? Then a helpline was set up. And we made a pamphlet. We helped BMTC make a pamphlet about, what is sexual harassment and what is the punishment for sexual harassment and who should you call in case there is sexual harassment. And of course, after 2-3 years, the Women's Safety Committee, they stopped meeting, and it needs a further push again to reignite it. But all this happened because we formed a forum. So this is one example, right? That you have to form a forum to make your voice heard. Because let me tell you one thing: power does not concede itself. Power has to be snatched. Right. So nobody will say, okay, today onwards we will start listening to bus commuters. Today onwards we'll start listening to street vendors. It's not going to happen. The elite are not going to automatically start listening, right? Because it's also the fact that you stay elite by restricting things to a particular group, right? So power has to be snatched, and for that power to be taken like that, you have to form these forums. So this is one way, right? So by forming Bus Pranakara Vedike, the second thing is, the second part to your solution is that there has to be a deeper democratization. We're in a condition today where BBMP elections have not been held for 4 years, right? So when BBMP elections are not held and when you don't have corporators, it's very difficult for those on the margins to get access, right? ಎಲ್ಲರೂ MLA ಮನೆ ಹತ್ರ ಹೋಗಕ್ಕಾಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಕಾರ್ಪೊರೇಟರ್ ಮನೆ ಆದ್ರೆ ಸ್ಟಿಲ್ ಈಸಿಯರ್ ಟು ಆಕ್ಸೆಸ್, ಬಟ್ MLA ಮನೆ ಹತ್ರ ಹೋಗಕ್ಕಾಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಒಂದು BBMP elections ಆಗ್ಬೇಕು, 2 ward committees. And that ward committees also, when they brought in the ward committee rules and they finally started the ward committees, we also mentioned to them that the structure of the ward committee should change a bit. For example, if you see in West Bengal, their rules are such that the ward committee should have at least 2 members who are below the poverty line. Andre ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಲಮ್ ನಿವಾಸಿಗಳು, ನೀವು ರೆಸಿಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, ರೆಸಿಡೆಂಟ್ ವೆಲ್ಫೇರ್ ಅಸೋಸಿಯೇಷನ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಅಸ್, ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಸ್ಪೀಕಿಂಗ್, ಲೇಔಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮನೆ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿರೋರು. They are the people who they consider residents. ನಮ್ಮ ಏರಿಯಾದಲ್ಲೇ ಡೋಬಿ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ನಮ್ಮ ಏರಿಯಾದಲ್ಲೇ ಬೀದಿ ವ್ಯಾಪಾರಿ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ನಮ್ಮ ಏರಿಯಾದಲ್ಲೇ ಎಳ್ಳೀರ್ ಮಾರೋರು ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಮನೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋರು. They are not considered residents. So in the ward committee also, residents representation andre RWA, who's only like us. That also needs to change. So that is also something that needs to change. But in addition to all of these, my request or my appeal to those of us who are privileged is, we have to start paying attention. We have to start paying attention to the problem of the Paura Karmikas, to the problems of the street vendors, to the problems of those who have to just walk and go and cannot afford anything else.
So, Vinay, this is an example of how we can take and implement the visibilization of the invisible. The thing is, something that I worked with you on long ago was the Bidi Vyapari Sangatane and how we can include them in this conversation. If you took that as an example, a lot of people, there is a contestation on the space on the road. Most of it is anyway taken away by the vehicle, and whatever is left, we are all fighting over it. Walkers need it, street vendors need it, whatever else multifunctions needs to be there, a tree there, wiring, a cable or light. So there is so much of contestations on the narrow space that is left behind. And in that, different people have different views on how that space needs to be used, and everybody is fighting for the small bit. The trees are the first to go. Then we look for the easy people like the vendors, because we don't think they belong there. They belong to the shops. The shops pay taxes, and there is always a fight. You had certain reasons for having them on, and of course, I know with having worked with them is that their eyes on the street. A lot of different things are there. What have you seen that evolve with the government? If you had that as an association trying to give them a voice, then we started looking at, there were some court orders around how they need to be regularized. How did that whole journey begin? Where is that whole street vendors thing? That is a very good example of people being marginalized. We see them in the public space more than we see the construction labor. How can we relate to that?
Before I start that, I first just want to give that conceptual understanding of that space of the street itself, right? Yeah, if we take a village, suppose there is a village where everybody, there is a village where houses are there and there is some land. Now, everybody in the village does not own agricultural land. Some people have no land. They're landless workers. They go to somebody else's land to work because they don't have private land. But the village, say, has 5 acres of gomala or grazing land. So even a person who does not own land, they'll have, say, 5-6 sheep or 2-3 cattle. And the cattle they can graze in this gomala. So this gomala is grazing land, which is commons, which everybody has access to, and which is there for everybody. So in that same village, there is one person who's landless, but who has 2 cows and, like, say, 6 sheep. And there's another person who owns 20 acres, and they also own, say, 40 sheep. Now, the person who has 40 sheep cannot come to this gomala and say, first ನಾನು graze ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ, ಆಮೇಲೆ if there is anything remaining, your 4 sheep and 2 cows can graze. Because it's commons. And what would you think is the best use of the commons? Should the commons be given to the person who already has 20 acres, who can anyway make money, or to this person who has no land and only on this his children are dependent? Normally different people might say different things, but I would think the most logical thing is you have to give that commons to the person who has no land. Correct. Because the streets are commons, and commons, of course, even the rich person has access to the commons. I'm not saying they don't have access to the commons, but you have to see how to distribute the commons in what is the best way. Similarly, like the Gomala, streets are the urban commons. And commons have to be used by everybody. But like you're saying, the commons are being disproportionately used right now. So the street space is limited. Number of cars have increased from 12 lakh to 24 lakh. And cars are everywhere. Cars are parked, cars are moving. Everything is for the car. And in that remaining little space, like you're saying, pedestrian street vendors are forced into a contestation. But actually, pedestrians and street vendors are interdependent. They're not at all to be seen separately. They're a very a natural
symbiotic.
Vendors exist because of pedestrians. And for pedestrians, street vendors give access to a lot of goods and services. Right? And by pedestrians, we also mean all bus users, because all bus users are pedestrians. ಯಾವ ಬಸ್ಸು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮನೆ ಬಾಗ್ಲಿಗೆ ಬರಲ್ಲ ಅಥವಾ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಆಫೀಸ್ ಬಾಗ್ಲಿಗೆ ಹೋಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಆಲ್ ಬಸ್ ಯೂಸರ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಪೆಡೆಸ್ಟ್ರಿಯನ್ಸ್.
ಅಲ್ಲ, ಗಾಡಿ ಯೂಸರ್ಸ್ ಕೂಡ ನೀವು ನಿಲ್ಸಾದ ಮೇಲೆ ನಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ ಬರ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇವರ ಪೆಡೆಸ್ಟ್ರಿಯನ್ ದೇರ್. ಆ ಕಡೆ ನಿಲ್ಲಿಸ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಈ ಕಡೆ ನಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ ಬರ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇವರ ಪೆಡೆಸ್ಟ್ರಿಯನ್. ಎಕ್ಸಾಕ್ಟ್ಲಿ,
ರೈಟ್. ಸೊ ನಾವು ಸ್ಟ್ರೀಟ್ ವೆಂಡರ್ಸ್ ಯಾಕೆ ಇರಬೇಕು ಒಂದು ಊರಲ್ಲಿ, ಅಥವಾ ಯಾಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ನೋಡೋಣ. Now, already ಹೇಳ್ದಂಗೆ, India has been an unequal society since long. These are facts. These are not something that I am listing. ಆ ಹಳ್ಳಿಲಿ ಯಾರಿಗೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಜಮೀನ್ ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ವೋ ಅಥವಾ ತುಂಬಾ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಜಮೀನ್ ಇತ್ತು, ಅವ್ರು those who didn't have irrigated land, migrated to the city. They didn't have enough capital to buy a shop or to rent a shop. What is the option? There's no option but to be on the street and vend. So people who are vending on the street really don't have an option. I've been part of the Street Vendors Union for the last 15 years. I can tell you that nobody likes to vend on the street. It's not a choice, because there's a lot of heat, there's a lot of dust, there is a lot of precarity. You never know when you're going to be evicted. Of course, there are some people who misuse the street, maybe 2-3% who put up a big gadi and they'll employ 3-4 people. But that's like a very minuscule percent, right? So coming to the street because they don't have an option. If they had money, they would move to a store. Nobody wants to be here in the heat and dust. So, which is why they're there. Now that they're there, you can also see the number of advantages that are there, right? I was telling somebody the other day, my friend, one lady, she was grabbed in Jayanagar 4th block in the afternoon at 3:30. Not near the complex, but near my house, which is 4th, which is a residential area. No people are there. This will never happen in 4th block near the complex because there's always vendors, there's always customers. So street vendors like Jane Jacobs also said are the eyes on the street. We had a street vendors union in Kaveri Nagar in North Bangalore, and they were evicted because some local politician bought a house opposite where the street vendors were there, and somebody told him it looks like an eyesore, so he got them evicted. 2 weeks after they were evicted, the concerned police station told us that, as long as you were there was no chain snatching in that area and there was no harassment. Now that you're not there, that area is desolate. And in the night and early mornings, chain snatching is happening. Right? So street vendors are also eyes on the street. Street vendors also give you access to certain goods which nobody else will give. For example, see, no shopkeeper will stand and open tender coconut, mess their shirt up, have risk at their fingers and keep doing it. Jackfruit, which is again painful to like sit and remove. Nobody else does that. Tatinungu. All of these things only street vendors are providing, right? Nobody else is providing. You can't sit in a shop and no shop is like selling these things. Or like even fresh food, right? Even Darshini is not affordable for many people because the Darshini one idli plate also will cost you 40-45 for only 2 idlis. If you're doing hard labor during the day, 2 idlis for lunch is not going to suffice. But street vendors give mudde, motte, ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. And like it's low cost, it's fresh, and also the menu is more like it's not like roti curry. ರೋಟಿ ಕರಿ ಕೊಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ, ಬೋಟಿ ಕರಿ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಥವಾ ಮುದ್ದೆ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಅನ್ನ ಸಾಂಬಾರ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. It's like more local and more like accessible. So these are all the reasons why street vendors are important, and street vendors are an important part of the local economy. In KR market, when the street vendors were evicted, the shopkeepers joined. They said, because there are customers. If you evict them, then who's going to buy from us? That is one thing. Secondly, if you see farmers from around Bangalore come to APMC yard in Yashwantpur, and many of their customers are street vendors. So if not for the street vendors, they also would not have business. So there is an organic link, and there is a reason why a city has street vendors. A place like Gandhi Bazaar, the charm comes from the street vendors selling the flowers and fruits and all of those things over there. The Supreme Court has said time and again that a footpath, both the pedestrian has a right to use it and the street vendor has a right to, have a livelihood from the footpath, and both have to use it together. And there is a way, it's largely a design problem. It's not there's no like in principle problem. It's largely a design problem, like how you design the streets. It's been 10 years now since the Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood and Regulation of Street Vending Act has come into force, 2014. And our union also formed roughly around that time, right? And we felt that many street vendors are not aware of their rights. Neither are government officials aware of their rights. So we formed the Street Vendors Union, and the Street Vendors Union is affiliated to AICCTU. And we've done numerous workshops on the law for street vendors. We brought out a comic on the Street Vendors Act. We brought out pamphlets explaining what are the street vendors' rights and duties. And not just that, under the Act, you also have to, BBMP also is mandated to conduct workshop for street vendors on their rights. So BBMP, we pushed BBMP a lot. And finally, around 2-3 years ago, BBMP also conducted workshops. And BBMP has also done a survey in 2017 of street vendors. Of course, the survey was not very good and it was flawed and it was not complete, but still around 25,000 vendors were covered and around 21,000 of them were given ID cards. A second survey is actually underway as we speak. Since the last 2-3 weeks, a survey is, at this time, a digital survey is being undertaken by BBMP. Again, everybody is not being covered and there are some issues, but a survey is being undertaken. And because the Street Vendors Act is there and because the Street Vendors Union is there, we've also been able to fight illegal evictions. We've been able to fight prejudice. So, for example, there are areas where they just come and evicted. The Street Vendors Act clearly says even if you want to evict somebody, you have to give a 30-day notice. You have to have alternate space which has equal business. None of those are followed and they're evicted. Right? So, and different places we've gone to court and we've managed to get a stay. Some places, yeah, sometimes you're not able to fight the eviction, and they've been evicted. But in places we've been able to do that. But because there is a union, there is a voice. And I'll tell you how, like, it changes in real terms, right? In
Hmm.
certain places where there was no union before, when the street vendors went to the police station, hinge kai katkondu ninkobeku. Like, I have to stand there
Hmm.
and, like, bow your head a little and talk
Obedient.
to the police. Now our vendors have found a union, they're able to go sit across the police and talk. That is the power of collectivization. So, the Supreme Court, when it gave its judgment on street vendors' rights in the Maharashtra Ekta Hawkers Union judgment on September 9, 2013, it made a statement. It said, the officials of the municipalities and the police do not understand the preambular value of dignity. The word dignity, which is there in our preamble, they don't understand the meaning of that, which is why they evict them like that, which is
Hmm.
why they spill their wares on the road, etc. And it's true. These officials, by nature, they don't understand the meaning of dignity. But where we have made a
Yeah.
union, then they're forced to listen to you. And our street vendors union, the street vendors have learned the law. They now file RTIs and they get details about their road, etc. For some time, they were evicted saying parking. So the street vendors filed RTI saying which are the designated parking spots out here. Right?
Correct.
Street vendors are able to quote the law. They show the law. They show these things, and so that's actually been important. So definitely, this collectivization has been important. It's helped us fight prejudice and illegal evictions in many places, not in all places. The government also pays a little more attention now because of the collectivization. Otherwise, they were not paying attention. My my sense is that, with good design and some political will, street vendors, pedestrians, all of us, we can live harmoniously. But we need to have some restriction on the car. The car is single-handedly destroying Indian cities like it has done to like many American cities, and we need to have some kind of a regulation. But otherwise, street vending adds great value to the city, and we can all live together harmoniously if everybody makes up their mind.
No, the car is a symbol of so many things that is wrong in how it has come to us, how we are imagining it, and how we're evolving it, and how we are destroying our cities with it. How we are not even able to understand that as cities grow and more people come, these old habits of luxury are not amenable in going forward as well, right? But it only seems to be getting worse because there is this staring hurry to grow rich also, hoping that it will get people out of poverty. That's the standard trope of capitalism that is always there. It has worked to some level, but it is also increasing the inequality. And it is showing up in our cities in a big way. And it is, I don't see it reducing unless these voices are going to get stronger. But these voices are also classified as woke and undevelopment or anti-development kind of labels are put just in order to continue the current locked-in set of behaviors that we need to do. There has to be a way of coexisting and not thinking that these two are against each other. And you put it very well in one of the things is that it's actually hurting you more, and we are not able to quantify to the elites that these people not being able to live well is actually hurting us more. It's hurting you more
Yeah.
than what it is, because you're not giving them proper transport at proper cost. They are on the road with you and clogging the streets with you. I mean, if you want your way out, you need to be able to support some of these things. How do you see this panning out in Bangalore? Increasingly, the business is going to get bigger and more influential. There's the real estate, there's the the elites that we attach the name to. They are going to continue to drive the agenda. And a lot of these other things, in simple things like cycling and walking and basic necessities, we are having to fight like crazy, right? And it hasn't seen, I've been in it for a decade and it is only getting worse. What hope do you see?
See, one thing is, as the poet Nazim Hikmat had said, there are several reasons for us to be sad, disappointed, angry, but that's not a reason for us not to be hopeful. So I'm
Hmm.
still hopeful. I am sad. I am angry. On an everyday basis, you get angry, and you do get disillusioned also. But still, and even the hope, losing hope or being hopeless is actually a privilege, because I can be hopeless. I still have my own
Hmm.
house. But if I'm hopeless, then the vendors whom I'm working with, or like other bus commuters, then what is going to happen to those struggles, right? So hope is there every day, and like we have to keep fighting. But it's actually a very dire situation right now, right? Like you said, land and land markets are kind of controlling this city, right? It's like real estate which is controlling the city for everything. Like you saw the other day, even Metro wanted land near Hebbal, 53 acres or so, or 45 acres or so. But the government could not intervene, and they said KIDB is already allotted it to some developer, so now Metro has to buy it from that person, pay compensation, etc. Right? So you're in a situation where
That's
like
just sad.
the deputy chief minister intervenes also, and like you're not able to get land for like a public project like Metro. Forget like housing, right? But the inequality is increasing in Bangalore, and it'll hurt. And the problem is when inequality increases, right? That actually many people exploit that, right? You will exploit that to create some kind of, say, communal tensions, some other kind of tensions. Hopelessness is not an option for those without privilege in the city, right? Every day they have hope that they'll get a better future, otherwise they cannot also continue. And for people like me who are privileged, but like I am standing shoulder to shoulder with those who are not. For me also, hopelessness is not an option, because I also want to fight that fight to make our cities inclusive and happy for all, right? We want a city which works for all, not just for a few. But the situation is becoming more and more dire by the day. Land prices are shooting up like anything. And even like middle class can't afford a house in the city now. If you didn't already have a house in, say, Malleshwaram or like Coxtown or anything like that, Rajajinagar, now to go and buy a house in any of these areas is like really very difficult, right? It's all in crores. You'll not get anything in
Even
that.
for me, even for people like you and me, it's going to be difficult to do
Yeah, I mean,
anything.
I am
Let alone the
sitting
rest.
I'm sitting in my own house now because my parents built this house, but I will not be
Exactly.
able to afford to buy anything. I'll not be able to afford to buy an apartment also, right? I work with a non-profit, and like I have a salary of a non-profit. There's absolutely nothing that I can afford. So we can imagine how it is for like garment workers who earn 10,000, 12,000 still, right? Garment workers still earn that low an amount. So the situation is very dire actually. And the problem is also that in some ways we are going backwards. So if you see garment workers' children, they have a lot of nutrition problems. Many of them have like nutrition problems because they're not able to afford nutritious food. We had a street vendors union near a garment workers factory, in northwest Bangalore. And that is the only street vendors market I've seen where street vendors sell bananas in pairs. ಅಂದ್ರೆ one full bunch ಇಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಎರಡೆರಡೇ ಇಡ್ತಾರೆ. I asked them, why are they keeping only two? They said the garment workers who are our main customers can't afford more than 2 bananas. So when they buy, they can buy only 2. And the vegetables which are sold there are the ones which are like, largely rejected at Yeshwantpur by everybody else. ಅದನ್ನ ಮಿಕ್ಕಿರೋದು ತಗೊಂಡ್ ಬಂದು ಇವ್ರು ಗುಡ್ಡೆ ಹಾಕಿ 5 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಗುಡ್ಡೆ ಹಾಕಿ ಮಾರ್ತಾರೆ, right? So we're a situation where like, say, garment workers, street vendors, their lives are like very precarious. One good thing which has happened is the Karnataka government, this present Karnataka government, has regularized most of the Paura Karmikas who are on contract. So recently around 12,000 Paura Karmikas were regularized. So that is good. It's a good step. But at the same time, if you see now, as you may know, solid waste ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಪೌರ ಕಾರ್ಮಿಕಸ್ only do the street sweeping. ಮನೆಗೆ ಬಂದು ಕಸ ತಗೊಳ್ಳೋರು ಬೇರೆ, ಆಟೋ ಡ್ರೈವರ್ಸ್ ಇವರು ಬೇರೆ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. Their jobs are still on contract and they're not being paid like up to 3-4 months at time, and their pay is very less and the working conditions are horrible. I was just passing through one area behind Nimhans, and male bandittu, and like there are these branches of some thorny bush which were cut and lying on the road. It's all slushy, and they were like picking with their bare hands these thorny bushes with all that slush and everything, and like having to put it inside there, right? So, and male bandaga, the whole garbage becomes so slushy. You don't even have like gloves or anything to like pick, and it's really inhumane. But if you see the city right now, both of these kind of extremes are happening, where somebody is able to buy an apartment for 4 crores, and like somebody is not even getting like, say, 10,000, 12,000 rupees salary. So this inequality, like I said, it will hurt in different ways in the long run. And inequality is also capitalized on by forces who want to foment, like, say, communal tensions, other things. Inequality will be capitalized on by them, right? So it's the situation is actually not going to be very good in a few years for all of us in Bangalore. There is an
100%.
urgent need that, like, those of us who care for the city, those of us who care for others, that we have to come back. We have to come back together and raise our voice. In that sense, I see your podcast is also very important because there are very little discussions happening on urban affairs, right?
Hmm.
Like this kind of discussion. What is happening on Twitter cannot be counted as a discussion, right? Because generally, we are all speaking at each other or something. A
Yeah.
discussion can't happen. Something like this needs to happen, but we all need to get together because the city is becoming unlivable. And like I said,
Hmm.
once it becomes unlivable for everybody. At some point of time, you have to come out of your gated community. At some point of
Hmm.
time, you have to get out of your car. At some point of time, you have to be there. Then what are you going to do? Right? So it's something for all of us to think about. If you're going to cut trees for the metro, if you're going to cut trees for now this tunnel road or whatever else, that's going to hurt everybody. It's not going to hurt only a few people. But the thing is, it hurts the underprivileged the most, but it will hurt everybody. So we have to, I feel like, we have to come together to save the city. It is still possible to save the city. When we all came together to oppose road widening in that time, BBMP wanted to cut 40,000 trees. Finally, they didn't cut that many, right? It's collective action that which was able to kind of reshape the city, right? Today, if many more people are speaking of bus and the importance of bus, it's because, like, we started raising our voice, right? So it is possible to do something, but we need to come together to make a city where, like, traveling in public transport reduces your tiredness and doesn't increase your tiredness. Where when you walk on the road, it helps you forget your other troubles and makes you smile. You should be able to see the tree, smell the fragrance of a flower of the Ratkirani or Akash Mallige or something like that. Where you're able to enjoy street food, where a street vendor is able to sell street food and get their children educated so that they don't have to continue to sell on the street. Where, like, every job, including that of a Paro Karmika and a waste picker, is seen with dignity, and everybody has equality of status and opportunity. Like I said, this is definitely possible to do, but there's a lot of work which is required to go in that direction.
That is what the city was supposed to give: dignity, dignity of
Yes.
labor, dignity of a person. You came to the city because you left an agricultural land, you came here to do commerce. And your
Yeah.
first step in commerce is start trading with what you have on the street.
Yeah.
And then you grow, get better, become bigger, contribute to the GDP, contribute to your tax revenues, and get to be what you are, and keep your empathy of the people and don't lock them behind you. Don't lock migrants behind you. Don't lock uh, the livelihoods behind you. Just because you got richer, you don't say nobody else can do the same. How do you create gradations here that allows for people to come up in life and become better, instead of trying to think that, like I said, you are more dignified than something else? This othering of it is going to cause a lot of problems, and it hurts us in the long run, because that street you didn't pay attention to for the street vendor and for the walkers and everybody else. Your car is now jammed on the flyover,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you did not even create an alternate for yourself. If you wanted to walk out of that, you locked yourself in
Yes.
into that road. You
Yes.
didn't create the path where you could have parked your car and walked and gone back and escaped out of it.
Yes.
We are locking ourselves into all of our ill conceived plans and notions, and we are going back to that. And it's extremely useful talking to you. I want to do another episode with you. I want to deep dive and come back and probably look at the street vendor housing and some of these issues. Why do slums continue to remain, and is that even a bad thing? What is it that we are giving them as dignity? How do you create dignity among the work that people do, and behave with them in a way that we don't create? That is work. This is work. You do it in an office, they do it there, and it's harder there. So you're not going to have to make it harder. How do we create this? I want to do that with you. Vinay, will you come back on the show some other time?
Absolutely. I'll definitely be happy to come back and talk because, like you said, it's really important for us to talk about because 25% of Bangalore lives in slums, and
Hmm.
actually now the older slums were at least little better. The newer slums are basically tarpaulin sheets on private land where they pay rent to some landowner. There is no water, there is no electricity, there is no toilet, and lakhs of people are living like that across the IT corridor from Electronic City to Whitefield and near Hebbal and Jakkur and all that side. These are the people who are building our city, but they have like no access to dignity. They have no access to any kind of proper housing. So the reason, Satya, I said it's also important to talk about slums is, people ask like, why did the slum arise, right? Now, if you look at somebody who's working as a domestic worker, and if you see what is the salary they're paid, they cannot afford to even rent a house, say in Jainagar or like anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So you're being paid wages which can only afford you a house in a slum. So then, if you ask the person why are you living in a slum, what else can they do? And if you also see how, for example, people who built MS building in Bangalore, right? Those who built MS building, they built the building and they had migrated and come. They had nowhere else to go. They were living there. Then they were evicted, right? Similarly, like construction workers and others who were living in Majestic were evicted many years ago to near opposite National Games Village, where LR Nagar and Rajendra Nagar and all of that. That was the dog pound of the city that time, right? They were evicted to near the dog pond and next to marsh. Even now that area gets flooded a lot, but they're like staying there, right? So it's almost like ಹಳ್ಳಿಲಿ ಶೋಷಿತ ಸಮುದಾಯದವ್ರಿಗೆ ಅಸ್ಪೃಶ್ಯರಿಗೆ ಕೇರಿಲಿ ಕೂರಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಅದೇ ತರ ನಗರದಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಲಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂರಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಸೊ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಕಾಂಬಿನೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ poor wages and it's a combination of the caste discrimination from the village which is carried forward here, which is what has created the slum. And it's important for us to talk about this and to think about it and to see what is it that we can do to ensure that everybody in the city has dignity. It's really important for us to talk about it. So I'll be happy to talk about it anytime very soon, Satya.
Thanks, Vinay, for coming to the show and
Thank you.
sharing your thoughts.